Senator Chef. Thanks, everyone. Great crowd. Beautiful day. Too bad the government hadn't rooted for us with the income tax. You know, I hear the politicians in Washington, they try to tell us that paying taxes is a sign of patriotism. Well, you know, this country was founded by people who didn't want to pay taxes, and they fought not to have to pay taxes. That's patriotism. And, you know, the original Tea Partiers, they were fighting because they didn't want taxation without representation. Well, you know, they actually had it pretty good. They never had a taste of excess taxation, even with representation, because that's worse. And that's what we've got now. I mean, do you think for 1 minute that the Tea Parties, the original Tea Parties, they would have rebelled against the English if they thought that the Continental Congress was going to impose an income tax? There's no way. In fact, we probably would have been better off had we still been a colony of the British, because Hong Kong, up until 13 years ago, was a British colony. And during all that time, Britain never imposed an income tax on Hong Kong. But we did it on ourselves. We passed a constitutional amendment so we could have an income tax, which shows you that the income tax is inherently in conflict with the Constitution, that they had to amend it just to make it possible. But I think the good news is, if we brought it on ourselves, we can end it ourselves. But the bigger problem is, if we think we're paying high taxes now, wait a couple of years. They're going a lot higher. Look at what's happening to the size of government. The next fiscal year, the U.S. government is spending almost $4 trillion in 1 year. Now, that is more than twice what the government spent. More than twice what they spent 10 years ago. When we elected George Bush. Now, how many people here thought the government was too big 10 years ago? Now it's twice the size. How can that possibly be? How can we afford that? How many people here are earning twice as much as they earned 10 years ago? Well, how can we afford a government that's twice as big? We can't. Now, the government is only collecting, and I put only here in quotes. The government is only collecting about $2.4 trillion in taxes. So how are they going to spend $4 trillion when they only got $2.4? They're borrowing the money. And what does that mean? That means we got to pay it back with interest. We got to pay it back. There's only two ways that we can pay this money back. Either with the biggest tax increase in American history, or with runaway inflation that's even worse. So either the government's going to take our money, or they're going to take our purchasing power. But either way, we're going to have to pay for all this government spending. And I don't want to pay for it. So if you want to stop it, if you really want to stop the spending, there's only one way to do it. And that's elect me as your United States Senator, send me to Washington, and it's going to stop. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do it, because it's not hard. It just takes a little courage. What I want to do, we got something called a debt ceiling. Although it's not much of a ceiling, because every time we get near it, we raise it. And we raised it about $2 trillion the last time Congress met to do it. Well, the national debt's going to hit about $14.5 trillion by about the time I get to the United States Senate. And unfortunately, we're going to blow through that $2 trillion, and Congress is going to want to raise the debt ceiling again. I'm not going to let them do it. Now, some people think we need a balanced budget amendment. We don't need that. Some people think we need to repeal Obamacare. We don't need to repeal it. We just have to not fund it. And that's easy. You see, repealing Obamacare means Obama has to sign it. He's not going to sign it. A balanced budget amendment means the states have to ratify it. Not raising the debt ceiling just takes 41 courageous senators to filibuster, and they can't raise it. And if they can't borrow, they can't spend, which means they have to cut. Now, there have been some Republicans in the past that have tried, that have threatened the filibuster of the debt ceiling. But they always backed down. They always caved in because the Democrats said, well, if you do that, we're going to shut down the government. But you know what? That's not going to scare me. That's right. Because if we don't shut down the government's going to shut down the country. Got it. We need another revolution in this country. Because it's not a revolution from the British, it's a revolution from our leaders in Washington who don't understand what this country means, what it's about, the principles it was founded on. We have a president of the United States who thinks the only reason that socialism hasn't worked in the past is because the right leaders weren't in charge. He thinks that he's smart enough and he cares enough to make it work. Well, it didn't work in the Soviet Union, it's not working in Cuba, and it's not going to work in the United States. We don't have a lot of time. Time is running out to do the right thing. You know, I talk about the fact that I want to serve one term. I want to be a United States Senator for 6 years. Because you know what? That's all we got. We can't keep doing this for another 6 years and expect to have a viable country at the end of it. So, and this movement, I think, really can do something meaningful for this country by electing me in the United States Senate. The Tea Party needs a voice in Washington because it doesn't have one now. And if I'm in Washington, I will be that voice. I will try to convince the other senators, the other representatives, that the time has come to put their own political careers aside, to stop doing what's expedient and do what's right, even if it's not popular. Everybody wants to talk about cutting taxes, but nobody wants to talk about cutting spending, because that's the only real way to do it. And spending is out of control, and it needs to stop. And if we don't do it, people credit me for predicting the financial crisis, but believe me, it ain't over yet. It's just started. 2008 was the beginning. The real crisis lies ahead. Because I know everything, and I mean everything, that the government has done. Starting under the Bush administration and continuing under the Obama administration. All the bailouts, all the stimulus, all that's done is made the problem worse. The country is in fundamentally worse shape now than it was before the crisis began. The economy is not recovering, it is getting sicker. Our politicians are looking and pointing at the GDP figures or pointing at consumer spending and saying, see, the economy is getting better because we're spending more borrowed money. We are spending ourselves deeper into debt. We are digging ourselves into a deeper hole. And you know what's growing? Not the economy, the government. The government is growing and it is crushing the economy beneath its weight. We have got to take a stand, and we have got to take a stand now before it's too late. You know, there was an article, and this is what's really troubling to me. There was an article in the I think it was Business Week. It was just a few weeks ago. I had it up on my website. And in that article, it said that the Americans that most want to emigrate are the children of immigrants. Chinese Americans, Indian Americans. And they asked them, why do you want to leave? And the answer was, opportunity. They wanted to leave the country for the same reason their parents came here. And in fact, there are so many young Chinese Americans going back to China that the Chinese actually have a word to describe them, and it literally translates into sea turtles, because they're coming home to lay their eggs. We need to put a stop to that. Right? People say that our children, we're leaving these debts to our kids. No, we're not. Because the kids are going to leave the country. They're not going to stay here and put up with it. We're going to pay these debts. This generation is going to get stuck with the bill unless we do something about it, and do something about it right now. Anyway, I really thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, and I really look forward to the opportunity of being a United States Senator from the state of Connecticut, and actually doing what I say, and being everybody's senator for the right reason, and thanks everybody.